You think you know Switzerland: chocolate, watches, Alps, banks, neutrality. What you probably don't know is that Switzerland hid entire Air Force bases inside mountains during the Cold War, with fighter jets that could taxi from hidden caverns directly onto public highways. That the Jurassic period, the one with the dinosaurs, is named after a Swiss mountain range. That one of the country's most visited peaks was officially banned from climbing for centuries because locals believed the ghost of Pontius Pilate was trapped in a lake near the summit, and that the ice that built Switzerland is now melting faster than at any recorded point in history. These are 25 facts that prove Switzerland runs a lot deeper than its postcard version suggests. Subscribe to Wild Europe Facts before we start. Fact 1. The Matterhorn, one of the most photographed mountains in the world, was not built by geology. It was carved by ice. 4 glaciers retreating simultaneously from 4 different directions sculpted it into a near-vertical horn shape on all sides over millions of years. Everything you are looking at when you see that peak is the work of retreating ice, not rising rock. Fact 2. For centuries, Mount Pilatus near Lucerne was officially considered haunted. Locals believed the spirit of Pontius Pilate was trapped in a lake near the summit, and that disturbing the mountain would release violent storms across the region. Authorities banned access to sections of it during certain periods. Today, it is one of Switzerland's most visited tourist destinations. One of the country's most popular peaks was once one of its most feared. Fact 3. The Jura Mountains of northwestern Switzerland gave their name to an entire chapter of Earth's history. When 19th century geologists identified the distinct age of the Jura's limestone formations, they named the entire global geological period after a Swiss mountain range. You already know the word, the Jurassic. It belongs to Switzerland. Fact 4. Switzerland's national hero William Tell, the archer forced to shoot an apple from his son's head, has never been confirmed as a real person. Historians have searched for evidence for centuries and found none. The story emerged from communities around Lake Lucerne, where resistance to outside rule had become central to local identity. Whether he existed or not, a legend born in the Alps helped shape an entire nation's sense of what it means to be free. Fact 5. The Swiss Guard has protected the Pope at the Vatican for over 500 years, and the reason they were available to do it in the first place is that the ALPS couldn't feed Switzerland's growing population. Military service abroad was an economic necessity driven by geography. Pope Julius II established the Papal Swiss Guard in 1506. They are still there today. A mountain food deficit produced the world's longest-serving military bodyguard unit. Fact 6. Swiss chocolate became a global industry because of alpine dairy farming, not because Switzerland had any access to cocoa or tropical ingredients. Daniel Peter discovered in 1875 that condensed milk from Henri Nestlé solved the decades-long problem of blending milk into chocolate. A landlocked mountain country with no tropical ingredients became the world's chocolate capital through dairy chemistry. The Alps made the milk made the chocolate. Fact 7. Switzerland produces more than 450 recognized cheese varieties: Gruyere, Appenzeller, Raclette, Tilsit, each tasting fundamentally different despite often being produced within relatively short distances of one another. The reason is altitude. Different elevations produce different grazing conditions, different grasses, different milk. Geographic isolation in alpine valleys created dairy traditions that survived for centuries, each as distinct as the valley that produced it. Fact 8. Geneva sits at the point where the Rhone exits Lake Geneva, on the edge of a neutral country accessible from both Western and Central Europe. No single empire could dominate it. That is precisely why the world chose it as a diplomatic home. Geneva today hosts over 40 international organizations and more than 750 non-governmental organizations. Its position on the map, not its politics, put it there. Fact 9. The Red Cross was founded in Geneva because one Swiss citizen, Henri Dunant, witnessed the aftermath of the Battle of Solferino in 1859, where approximately 40,000 soldiers were left dying without care. He went home and wrote a book. That book led directly to the founding of the International Committee of the Red Cross in 1863. One person's reaction to one battle became one of the most influential humanitarian organizations in human history. Fact 10. During the Cold War, Switzerland carved aircraft hangars, ammunition depots, command centers, and entire military facilities directly into alpine mountains. Some fighter jets could taxi from hidden underground caverns onto runways built beside ordinary public roads. Swiss defense planners assumed that if Europe went to war, the Alps themselves would become Switzerland's fortress. From the outside, the bunkers looked like barns and houses. They were not barns and houses. Fact 11. The Gotthard Base Tunnel, completed in 2016 after 17 years of construction, stretches 57.1 kilometers through the Swiss Alps, the longest railway tunnel ever built anywhere on Earth, sitting up to 2,300 meters beneath the mountain surface. Switzerland bored through some of the most geologically difficult terrain in Europe to build it. The Alps that defined Swiss identity for centuries also stood between Switzerland and the continent it depended on for trade, so they went through. Fact 12. The Simplon Tunnel, completed in 1906, stretched 19.8 kilometers and held the world record for the longest railway tunnel for over 75 years. When it opened, it transformed movement between northern Europe and the Mediterranean in ways that reshuffled 2,000 years of mountain pass trade routes overnight. A single tunnel made most of Switzerland's historic mountain crossings economically irrelevant. Fact 13. The Lauterbrunnen Valley and the Bernese Oberland above it became the first landscape where wealthy Europeans deliberately traveled to experience mountains rather than fear them. Before the 19th century, mountains were considered dangerous and undesirable. The Eiger, Moench, and Jungfrau changed that entirely. Within a generation, this one valley transformed how the entire world perceived wild mountain landscapes. Modern alpine tourism was invented here. Fact 14. Zermatt has been car-free for over a century. The ban on motor vehicles was introduced in the early 20th century as a practical response to the narrow paths leading into the valley. What started as a geographic limitation became a global brand. Millions of visitors now come specifically because the town looks and feels almost unchanged from the Victorian era. A problem of access became the defining feature. Fact 15. Ticino, Switzerland's southernmost canton, lies entirely south of the Alps. It speaks Italian, follows Mediterranean traditions, and feels culturally nothing like the German-speaking cantons to the north. It joined the Swiss Confederation not through cultural affinity, but because Switzerland needed to control the southern exits of the Gotthard Pass. Geography attached an Italian-speaking community to a German-speaking nation. That dual identity has held for 5 centuries. Fact 16. Romansh is a direct descendant of the vulgar Latin spoken by Roman soldiers and settlers who arrived in the Alps nearly 2,000 years ago. Geographic isolation in the valleys of Graubünden preserved the language through centuries of change across the rest of Europe. Around 60,000 people still speak it today, a living link to the language of the Roman Empire, surviving in the Swiss Alps because the valleys around it were too isolated to let it die. Fact 17. The Aletsch Glacier stretches approximately 23 kilometers and holds roughly 11 cubic kilometers of ice, the largest glacier in the Alps. It has retreated more than 3 kilometers since 1870 at an accelerating rate. It is a primary source of summer meltwater for rivers flowing toward the Mediterranean. Its disappearance does not only affect Switzerland. What the Aletsch loses, the downstream valleys feel. Fact 18. The Rhone Glacier, the same glacier that carved Lake Geneva, Lake Zurich, and the Swiss Plateau during the last ice age, is now retreating faster than at any recorded point in history. Workers cover portions of it with white blankets every summer to slow the melting. The ice that built Switzerland is disappearing within a single human lifetime. What took 24,000 years to create is being undone in a century. Fact 19. Switzerland has over 1,500 lakes, most of them carved by glaciers during the last ice age, which left thousands of depressions across the landscape that filled with water as the ice retreated. Lake Geneva, Lake Constance, Lake Zurich, all of them are glacial scars filled with meltwater. The lakes that define Switzerland's landscape are the footprint of the ice that built it. Fact 20. The Swiss plateau, the relatively flat region between the Alps and the Jura Mountains, was one of Europe's first proto-industrial regions. Before steam power, it was producing linen, silk, and embroidery in hundreds of villages. The plateau's flat terrain, alpine river power, and established trade connections made it one of the first areas in continental Europe to develop manufacturing at scale. Swiss industrial culture predates the Industrial Revolution by centuries. Fact 21. Switzerland has approximately 128 kilometers of railway track per 1,000 square kilometers of territory, one of the densest rail networks in the world. Building it required tunnels, bridges, and mountain railways on a scale that few countries attempted. The Jungfrau Railway, for example, climbs through tunnels blasted directly inside the Eiger and Moench mountains. Switzerland built a transport system through terrain that was designed by geography to resist one. Fact 22. Basel sits at the exact corner where Switzerland, France, and Germany meet along the Rhine. 3 legal systems, 3 languages, and 3 national histories converge at a single bridge. A resident of Basel can walk between 3 countries in under 20 minutes. The entire modern European project of open borders is visible in miniature at a single river crossing in northwestern Switzerland. Fact 23. The world's most powerful particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider, sits beneath the Swiss-French border near Geneva, stretching 27 kilometers underground. A country historically known for mountains, watches, and cheese became one of the world's leading centers of particle physics. The LHC is where scientists confirmed the existence of the Higgs boson in 2012. It sits a few kilometers from where the Red Cross was founded. Fact 24. Switzerland exports approximately 24 billion Swiss francs worth of watches annually, making it the world's leading watch exporter by value, despite producing virtually none of the metals or gemstones required to make them. The industry was built by French Protestant refugees who brought precision craft skills into Swiss cities and valleys in the 16th and 17th centuries. A country with no relevant raw materials became the global benchmark for luxury watchmaking through refugee craftsmanship. Fact 25, and the one that makes everything else make sense. Switzerland has no major natural resources, no empire, no coastline, no agricultural surplus, and no colonial history to draw from. What it has is the Gotthard Massif, the mountain knot at the center of Europe, where 4 rivers begin. The continent's most strategic passes converge, and the original cantons built their independence. Everyone who needed to cross Europe had to deal with whoever controlled that point. Switzerland figured out how to be that someone. Every institution, every industry, and every aspect of Swiss identity traces back to communities that formed around controlling a single mountain at the center of the continent. Geography was the foundation. What Switzerland built on top of it is the fact. That is 25 facts that prove Switzerland is far more complex than chocolate and neutrality. Which fact got you? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you think I missed something, tell me, because your comments shape what we cover next. If wild, real geography is your thing, subscribe to Wild Europe Facts, where I am covering the whole continent, one country at a time. See you in the next one.